Due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic around the world, students and teachers were shifted abruptly to remote teaching and learning. Although teachers find teaching and learning challenging, especially online, they find that online assessment is the most challenging of all in their virtual classrooms. In this video, I'm going to give you some tips to turn the challenges into possibilities to better assess your students taking language or content courses with you. I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Hanadi Mirza. I am a teacher, trainer, assistant professor, researcher, and educational consultant. That's why I'm going to focus in this video on how to assess our students online despite all the challenges we're facing as teachers. If we're going to talk about online assessment, what is online assessment? As a definition, online assessment is mainly the electronic version of the paper and pencil test that was transformed electronically and taken now on the internet using computers, mobile phones, iPads, etc. What are some forms of online assessment? The most common ones are the online quizzes, especially the MCQ ones, essay questions asking students to write extensively in a box where they have to type. You have the drag and drop, especially for students to fill in the blanks or for kids as well. We have the online interviews, dialogue simulations, the 1 to 2 minute speech. We ask students for an impromptu speech. Online polls, they are very interesting, especially if you are attending a webinar or a workshop or even during a session. We have also the game type activities. It's interesting to have different groups in the classroom and having them compete against each other to find out which group is going to win at the end. And peer evaluation and review, asking students to comment on each other's performances and projects. Outline. In this video, I'm going to focus mainly on the following types of assessments. Assessment for learning, also known as diagnostic and formative. Assessment of learning, including the summative assessment. Assessment as learning, also called Ipsative assessment. And I'm going to use these types of assessment in order to help you assess your students online in English language classrooms and also if you are giving them content courses. Something I would like to highlight and to draw your attention to is that due to the use of technology, some teachers forgot that they are teaching English or content, and they basically invested their time in technology to have the format and the layout and the animation rather than focusing on the pedagogy behind their teaching. That's why it's interesting, of course, to use technology to have things animated and to have also interaction in your classroom. However, it's very important to focus on the pedagogy rather than the technology. Let's focus now on the English language classroom courses. And here I'm focusing basically on the courses taught for foreign students, especially the EFL students. And these English language classrooms are adopted according to the CEFR, the Common European Framework of Reference. So we are using the division known or known at the CEFR, which is the A1, A2 for beginners, B1, B2 for intermediate students, and C1, C2 for advanced students. And this way, students are going to follow the CEFR and learn according to the objectives set by this framework. The first assessment I'm going to focus on is basically the assessment for learning, and the first assessment is going to be the diagnostic assessment. What do we diagnose? We basically diagnose at the beginning of the session or course students' weaknesses and strengths. Here we're talking about the language, so basically we're working on the language skills: listening, speaking, reading, writing, and the sub-skills, grammar and vocab. And we want to determine what are their weaknesses and strengths so that we can actually place them in the correct category or correct classroom, whether A1, A2, B1, B2, etc. So what are the language skills that found inside the test? Listening, we give them audios and questions so that they can answer. They are basically multiple choice questions. Grammar, also they are multiple choice questions where students need to show their knowledge of grammar. Reading, we give them text and they have also to answers using multiple choice questions. And at the end, of course, the vocab is integrated within the reading texts. And at the end, the writing, we ask them to write a paragraph or an essay depending on their level. In the first session, it's very important also to focus on speaking. That's why it is advisable in the first session either to ask students to record 45 to 60 seconds, around a minute, an audio recording and send it to WhatsApp, especially if the teacher and students have a WhatsApp group together, or they can record it and upload it on Microsoft Teams. This is the platform we are using at university. There are other applications. Teachers can also use Flipgrid and ask students to record around a minute about a specific topic. This way the teacher can evaluate the students' fluency and accuracy when it comes to their speaking skill. And in their writing, students also can be asked to write for around 25 minutes a paragraph or an essay about a topic that they know enough about. This way students don't struggle with ideas. And whenever they're done, they can also upload it on Microsoft Teams. This way, the teacher can basically evaluate students' weaknesses and strengths and can accordingly develop the lesson plans in order to help these students develop better their productive skills, i.e. the speaking and writing skills. The second assessment I would like to focus on is the assessment for learning, also known as formative assessment. Formative assessment is done during instruction. So if the diagnostic assessment is done before instruction, before the teacher is teaching anything, the formative assessment is done during instruction. So the teacher has already explained something and she would like to check students' understanding. In this case, also, students can be given different activities. It could be listening skills. And in order to make sure that all students are participating, it's very important to ask the student to answer all of them, the questions, either in the chat box or, for example, if you are using Padlet, if you are using different applications. This way, students can all interact together and the teacher can check understanding of the whole class rather than asking one or two students only to give her the answers. As for the speaking, also the teacher can ask students to record 1 minute audio. It could be on WhatsApp, it could be on Flipgrid, it could be also on Microsoft Teams, they upload it there. It could be also an activity on Zoom where students in groups, let's say 4 students, they can meet offline, and after class actually, they can meet after class on Zoom, and they can show their pictures, they can open their cameras as well, this is better, and they can record a dialogue together in the form of an MP4 or video and send it to students. So the speaking activity that students can work on could be individual activities or group activities in such a way that students show their integration of the grammar and vocab learned in the themes or the lessons, and this way students can apply what they're learning into their speaking activities. Reading passages, also students can show how much they can understand what they read, and they can also answer in the chats. They also upload their answers if they are asked to answer open-ended questions. This way, students can also show how much they can understand what they read, or they can understand what they hear by answering interactively and by providing students actually with modes to interact. We cannot ask students to answer if we don't give them the opportunity, either using different applications so that everybody answers at the same time, or in the chat box, or send the answers privately. This way, students cannot cheat much about it. And in the final one, the writing, it's very important to ask students to comment on each other's work. This way students can learn how to revise and edit writing, and they can improve their own work as well. Also, we can ask students to provide them with, let's say, a paragraph writing, and there are mistakes in it, whether in the structure, in the paragraph structure of the sentence, or even in the idea development, and we can ask groups to work on the correction and provide the comments in a separate file uploaded on the platform. So in listening, speaking, reading, writing, students basically are working on the English language skill. Usually the vocab is integrated within the reading and the grammar as well, and teachers can also evaluate students' application of the grammar, their lesson they are learning, and the different vocab they are learning in speaking and writing activities. In the formative assessment, the most important thing is feedback. It's very important to keep giving feedback to students so that students know where they're doing well, where they're making mistakes, how they are improving, where are their weaknesses so that they can work on them. So constant feedback is highly important in the formative assessment, i.e. during instruction, while students are still learning the knowledge or skill required. We're moving now to a third type of assessment, assessment of learning. When we want to assess learning, we basically use the summative assessment. Summative assessment because it is used after instruction, after the teacher is done actually explaining a lesson and working on different activities. Now it's time to check whether students learned the material or acquired the skill, yes or no. Summative assessment can include midterms or final exams. And again, as far as these English language courses were concerned, we also have in the final and the midterm, we have listening activities. We usually give them 2 audios with 2 different listening activities where students answer by choosing the correct answer if it's multiple choice, or it could also be true, false, where we have 3 options, true, false, or not mentioned. Grammar also, students are going to demonstrate whether they learn the grammar lesson properly by choosing the correct answer as well. In the reading passages, we provide them with 2 different reading passages and some vocab items as well, and students should also choose the correct answer since it's also multiple choice. And at the end, they are provided with a writing topic. Students need to develop a paragraph or an essay, again, depending on their level. The most important thing is that during the midterm and final, it's quite impossible to have any speaking test. That's why the teacher should test the students before the midterm or before the final exam. Actually, in the session or 2 sessions before the midterm or 2 sessions before the final exam, teachers can ask students to work on some speaking activities. And in these speaking activities, students should show their application, their learning of the grammar lessons and the different vocabs in order to enrich their speaking and writing with their different languages, knowledge and skills. So, in order to make sure that the students is working on the speaking, we can ask them during the online session to present. You have oral presentation, or we ask them something and they have to talk for a minute or two in order to work or have a grade on the speaking part. So it could be an oral presentation, it could be both oral presentation and oral exam. Again, it's important to notice that there are different tests on the internet and they are teachers-made tests. And these teacher-made tests need to be analyzed before you use them inside your classroom. And I developed a separate video called 3 Steps and 5 Objective Items to Better Test Your Students, showing what you can do to make sure that you are on the safe side and using the correct items from the teacher-made test, because you need to question the validity of the items. What are the different test items that you can use to test your students' knowledge and skills in the language classrooms? There are several ones. Basically, the objective items, MCQ or multiple choice questions, TF or true-false items. You have also the extensive answer. These are the subjective ones, in case you would like students to develop paragraph and writing. Sentence completion is also could be an objective item. Gap fill, where students need to fill in with a missing word or group of words. Gap text, where students have to rearrange a text like a puzzle in specific order to make it coherent and logical sequence. And we also have matching and multiple matching and close passages. These are some of the items that are highly common in the language classroom. If we're going to move to the last type, which is assessment as learning, Ipsative assessment. Well, it was the first time I read about Ipsative assessment. The term was very new to me, but it's very simply the self-referenced assessment. What do I mean by self-referenced assessment? It means that if I have a student who has trouble, let's say, with some pronunciation, the student pronounced some sounds wrong, like z and s instead of the and th, I basically give them feedback, give them some activity, and ask them to work or rework what they did in order to pronounce better the and th. And when the student does this activity, I compare what he did now to what he has done before, which means this is the Ipsative. I'm not comparing students to others. I'm not comparing them to the class. I'm not comparing them to other criteria. I am simply comparing the students to his previous performance or previous task. So, in speaking, this is what I can do in order to help students develop their fluency and accuracy in, for example, like the example I just gave you, the English pronunciation. It could be something else. It could be the use of grammar. While speaking, the student makes mistakes in subject-verb agreement, for example. The most important thing is that I'm giving student the chance to improve his speaking skill, and I'm giving here basically the speaking skill as an example because this is our target. We want our students to speak properly, fluently, accurately whenever they are in basically working on a monologue or a dialogue, whether they are conversing with others or simply giving a talk or a presentation as a monologue. This is where we want our students to work harder on developing their speaking skills in order to communicate better with others around the world. Now let's move to the content courses. Content courses, let's say I'm giving an example like methodology courses and linguistics courses. What can we do in order to assess our students online and have good results without having to worry about students cheating? Because as you know, in online assessments, student cheating is higher than in regular traditional classrooms. If we're going to focus on diagnostic and formative assessment in content courses, what can we do if working with methodology or linguistics courses? Very importantly, one way to have students interact in class is to ask the whole class to answer a question in the chat box. This way you can be sure whether students are attending and participating or simply muting their microphone and they're not here. So every now and then you can ask students to answer on the spot a question in the chat box, and you can check whether they are here, number one, and whether they are following in class. We can also have multiple choice questions that can be used as a diagnostic or formative assessment as well. Again, if you want to make sure that students have less chances to cheat, we have to give them more items in less time. Let's say 30 questions in 20 minutes or so. This way, they don't have really time to cheat, or at least they can cheat less. Of course, by shuffling the questions and shuffling the items as well, the ABCDs. We can also have discussions in class and ask students, call on them to answer to make sure that they are following, and we can give them constant and specific feedbacks to help them learn. Students can also upload extensive answers if you want them to answer like in a paragraph or an essay form. We can ask them to type it down and upload it on the platform. In the summative assessment, also in the midterm or the final exams, again, MCQ questions and true-false quizzes are highly used. It's true that they take a lot of time to be constructed, but one good thing about online quizzes is that they are automatically corrected. So MCQ and true-false take a lot of time from the teacher. It's time consuming and energy consuming to prepare questions that are MCQ and true-false online. However, one good thing is that, as I said, they are automatically corrected. And as I mentioned before, it's very important to squeeze students with time so that to make sure they don't have enough time to cheat. If they have some time to cheat at least a couple of questions, they don't have time to cheat the whole quiz. Remember, students are very smart in cheating, so they can screenshot even if let's say they are taking it online and it is multiple choice question and it is shuffled. They can screenshot the screen. Actually, they can shoot the screen, they can take a screenshot, and they can simply circulate it on their private WhatsApp group. Many students have private WhatsApp groups other than the groups shared with teachers. In some universities, WhatsApp groups are not allowed at all. And if the administration knows that students are sharing a private WhatsApp group, they are very severely punished and sometimes expelled out of the faculty. Audio recordings can also be used in order to evaluate students' speaking, fluency, speaking accuracy. You can ask students to record. You can check pronunciation. You can check the application of some grammar and vocab learned during the course. And as I said, audio recordings could be sent on WhatsApp. They could be uploaded on Microsoft Teams or sent to the teacher's email, provided that students are using the memo recording or voice recording on their mobile phones, not a voice message on WhatsApp, because it's not basically, it cannot be shared on, let's say, by email or on Microsoft Teams or on other platforms. Videotaping also is very interesting. Students can work in groups or they can work individually. They can tape themselves, videotape themselves, and then upload it on Microsoft Teams or share it on WhatsApp. Oral presentation is another way of checking students' oral fluency and accuracy, and they can check also the learned content via oral presentations. Projects are highly used by teachers because they believe they better evaluate students much more than MCQ and true-false quizzes that can be easily cheated. So with projects, students can demonstrate more their knowledge in the specific content. They can work individually or in groups again. Of course, if the project is individual, the students can be better evaluated by the teachers. As you know, due to the pandemic and the COVID pandemic, and due to the very difficult economic situations, several universities have opted to merging classes. So this time teachers can have in one class more than 70 or 80 students, and it would be definitely difficult. It's very difficult to have individual projects in a classroom with 60 or 70 or more students. However, students can also write, other than projects, students can write lesson plans, unit plans, and other types of projects, case studies. It depends on the course and its requirements. One other way that teachers also use in order to evaluate their students' knowledge of the content being taught is to send them an exam in a Word form or Word document, where students need to download it from the platform or basically from the email. It depends whether the teacher sent it via email or simply uploaded it on the platform. The students are going to type their answers inside the document and then upload it again on the platform to be graded by the teacher. One thing that I would like to draw your attention to, this equation, I really loved it. It was written by Eric Mazur. He's a physics teacher at Harvard.